1971 was the year that your money officially became worthless. Now you might say that your money still has value to this day, and you might be partially right, but the question is, why does it have value? You see, simply put, it's just because you believe it does. And that's the beauty and the curse of fiat currency. It works as long as everyone believes it works. I mean, it sounds almost religious. And all of that began in 1971. You see, prior to 1971, the government had to hold a certain amount of gold for every dollar they printed. You see, the dollar was backed by gold, and you could redeem 1 ounce of gold for $35. And this ensured inflation was steady and made it so that money actually held value because you could always exchange it back for gold. The problem with this, it was extremely hard for the Fed to print more money when they had to put 1 ounce of gold as collateral for every $35 they printed. I mean, it would be much easier if they could just simply, I don't know, print money out of thin air. And that is exactly what they did, and still do to this day. That was the first big event that happened in 1971. President Nixon severed ties between the dollar and its golden base, meaning the dollar was no longer convertible to gold. And that is the very thing that has led to the obscene devaluation of the American dollar ever since. Now, learning that led me to an inevitable question. Why? Why would the government tarnish their own currency's value by taking it off the gold standard? And the answer became apparent very quickly. As always, it's all about control. You see, at the time, the US dollar was pegged to gold, and every other major currency was pegged to the dollar. So when England and France threatened to redeem their gold, the Fed was in trouble given their limited gold reserves. And at the same time, the US was facing a recession and was struggling to stimulate the economy because of the government's monetary policy. Because at the time, it was really just limited by the amount of gold they had. So the Fed needed a way out. They needed to boost their domestic economy and make sure the US remained the world's reserve currency. So they decided to go off the gold standard. And that meant that the government could now print unlimited money whenever they pleased to stimulate the economy and still keep their status as a global reserve currency. Now, this eased the international pressure they were under and allowed the government to gain even more control, because money essentially became debt that was secured by nothing except for your trust in the government. And that trust was something that they could abuse for their own gain. So with an unbacked currency, there was no limit on how much money the government could print, no limit on how much debt that they could take on. And the effect? Well, you see, the puppet masters now effectively had unlimited money because of the push of a button. They could just simply make more. And so they did. They expanded the money supply and continued devaluing the dollar, crippling its purchasing power. And now that the dollar could be printed on demand, the Federal Reserve was more powerful than ever before. And the puppet masters now had complete reign over the US money supply with the right to print it on demand whenever they pleased. How much they wanted, whenever they wanted it. And that was the final move the puppet masters needed to push their Great Reset initiative. Why? Because now they had the ultimate mass control tool in their arsenal: inflation.